الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين صدق الله العظيم. We praise Allah and glorify Him, and we beseech Him this night most humbly for His guidance and for His blessings and for His protection as we attempt to address the subject beyond September the 11th attack on America, the future of the Muslim Ummah. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. I would like to take about 1 hour of speaking time, because tonight I would be much more interested in your writing to me all the questions you have, and not just your questions, your thoughts, your comments. So that tonight is not only my lecture to you, it's also your feedback, because one man can't handle this subject. It is the collective thoughts and the collective wisdom. And wherever I have traveled in the world, and Allah has been so kind, you'll be amazed to know the number of places I've gone. I've invariably benefited from my audiences. I've learned so much from my audiences. We begin in Allah's blessed name. The ayah of the Quran, of course, Surah An-Nahl, I always begin with this ayah. And we sent down the book, the Quran, on thee, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, that this Quran might explain all things. And therefore that this Quran might explain the strange world in which we are living today. It's not just politically strange, with its political globalization, moving in the direction of world government. And that tomorrow when the United Nations will disappear. It's not only strange in its economy, moving in the direction of globalization of an economy, a world economy, in which one people will now enslave all of mankind. It's not only strange in respect of the emergence of one way of life, one culture. I call it the blue jeans Jamaat. Everybody living the same way. Everybody having the same diseases around the world. Being born the same way, being dying the same way, being buried the same way, around the world. It's not only strange in terms of what is happening to mankind, but what is happening to the environment, the earth. Around the world. The same thing, which is why they had that conference in what used to be called Johannesburg, now it's Igoli. Gauteng. The Johannesburg World Summit. But in addition to this, there's also something else strange happening. And that is a confirmation of the hadith. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, and you take this hadith home with you tonight as you ponder the issues. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود غريبا. When Islam began, it was something strange and therefore different from everything else in the world. And Islam will one day return to that state of being something strange and different from everything else in the world. And we are now living in that age in which Islam, not part-time Islam, no, we're talking about the Islam of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, that Islam. That Islam is becoming something stranger and stranger. Something different from the rest of the world. Different from that globalized political order. Different from that globalized world economy. Different from that globalized culture or way of life. Like a square peg in a round hole. But not for Islamic modernism. I don't know whether you ever met it. A strange creature called Islamic modernism. It was it was alive and very well healthy in Malaysia. Until a great axe fell upon it a few years ago. I warned them, but they wouldn't listen to me. Islamic modernism, of which my teacher, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari Rahimahullah, warned, and his book is downstairs, the best book on Islam, in my opinion, ever written in the English language, is his 2-volume work, The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society. My teacher, of blessed memory, is downstairs. Islamic modernism, an attempt to reinterpret the religion, to subject Islam to a progressive interpretation so that it can fit in with the modern world, so that America can sit down and have dinner with Islam. And structure of Muslim society. My teacher, of blessed memory, is downstairs. Islamic modernism, an attempt to reinterpret the religion, to subject Islam to a progressive interpretation so that it can fit in with the modern world, so that America can sit down and have dinner with Islam. So in the United States, while I was there, I saw this strange version of American Islam emerging from a large section of the African American Muslim community, an American version of Islam that America would be comfortable with, and sit down and have dinner with this Islam. Islamic modernism, trying to make Islam to be in harmony with the modern world. But the Islam of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam is today becoming what it was at the time when it emerged. Something gharib, something strange, something different. Having said that, I don't need to deliver the rest of the lecture, because you now can understand the analysis which follows. And there are many opinions that you now have to discard and throw it into the garbage bin, when once you hold on to this hadith of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. On September the 11th, the United States was attacked. We know from eyewitnesses that there were 2 aircrafts which struck at the Twin Towers in Lower Manhattan. And it could be that the aircrafts themselves caused the buildings to collapse. It could also be they got some help from some dynamite and so on planting before. We know from eyewitnesses that there was a 3rd aircraft which crashed in Pennsylvania. And no less an authority than the White House itself confirmed that aircraft, the plan was for that aircraft to target Air Force One and to target the White House. And we have unconfirmed reports because no one saw, and there was no evidence on the ground. Absolutely astonishing, isn't it? A huge aircraft slams into a building and there is no evidence that the aircraft ever existed. The Pentagon. America was attacked on September the 11th in circumstances which were absolutely suspicious. Who attacked America on September the 11th? And we have said that there is a massive cover-up on the part of the Bush administration. And we have anticipated that those who have information so far concealed will eventually release that information in order to embarrass the US government as part of a strategy to bring down America. And so CNN is going to be broadcasting it. And the New York Times is going to have a field day. And all those who control the media in the United States are now going to go to work to lavishly publish all of this information which demonstrates beyond doubt that the US administration was involved in a massive cover-up. Who attacked America on September the 11th? We used a method. We said, since we do not have the evidence which can be used in a court of law, let us look to see who has benefited. And when we use that method of analysis, we have come to the conclusion that the only beneficiary of the September 11th attack on America has been far and away the State of Israel. There is a little booklet outside, a Muslim response to the attack on America. It's just about 25, 28 pages. I want to suggest to you, and it's very cheap, I think maybe $2. I want to suggest to you it might be a good idea to take this booklet and give it out to people who you think ought to have a little bit of brainstorming. Because when they read this, they'll be stunned. They won't get this in their newspapers and from the mainstream media in this country. But when they read this, I think they're going to have, for some of them, an intellectual wake-up call. So that booklet is downstairs. We said that those who attacked America, therefore, must have at their core the Israeli Mossad. And they must have benefit and help from many others within the United States, within the administration, even from within the White House. When we look at their strategy, we see that they put on board the aircraft a large number of Saudis. Sounds suspicious. Why so many Saudis? And these are not Saudis who are well known for their Islamic fervor, for being what they call militants. No, these are middle of the road, normal Saudis who drive BMWs. People who attended American universities, for example. They were on board the aircraft and they died when the aircraft crashed. So these were the hijackers, except that one of them read in the newspapers that he was dead. So he went to the Saudi government and he said to the Saudi government, "It seems to me as though I'm alive." The Saudi newspapers published this article, which I read with my own eyes. This particular student had studied in Minnesota, I think, in the early 1990s. And in 1995, perhaps, he had reported both to the local police and to the Saudi embassy in the United States that someone had broken into his apartment and stolen his passport. Whoever did that used that passport to hijack his identity, and so they could put him on board the aircraft. And so the planning for September the 11th, 2001 started many, many years before. Which reminds me, I must tell you that when I arrived in New York in April 1991, through Allah's leave and kindness, within a matter of 6 months in New York, I had already been pushed to a very high profile position, very well known in the entire New York metropolitan area. And then in November 91, when I had gone to the State University of New York in Stony Brook, someone broke into my apartment and stole only my passport. That's all. So if ever you get the news that Imran Hussein blew up the moon, you'll understand the background. They're holding it. They have not as yet used it. But the more I talk about it, the less likely that they can use it. My passport, therefore my identity. My passport. That's all. So if ever you get the news that Imran Hussein blew up the moon, you'll understand the background. They're holding it. They have not as yet used it. But the more I talk about it, the less likely that they can use it. My passport, therefore my identity. Why so many Saudis? It's suspicious. And why these middle-of-the-road Saudis? The answer is because Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia, has a friendly relationship with the United States. In fact, there is something common between the state of Saudi Arabia and the state of Israel which would surprise you. They are sisters. The same forces who work for the establishment of the state of Israel are the same forces who work for the establishment of the state of Saudi Arabia. The same forces who have kept Israel alive today and guaranteed Israel's security are the same forces who have kept Saudi Arabia alive today and has guaranteed Saudi Arabia's security. And when the state of Israel is to be destroyed, Saudi Arabia also goes down into the garbage bin. They're sisters. But at the moment, the friendly relations and the good press which Saudi Arabia receives in the media in the United States of America, and the fraternal relations between the government of Saudi Arabia and the government of the United States stands in the way of those who attacked America on September the 11th. In what way? I said to you last time I was here that the United States cannot attack Iraq until a particular moment arrives. And I gave you some homework. I ask you to think. Iraq does not pose any threat to the United States. It does not pose any threat to the state of Israel. The Israelis have to be digging and digging and digging for a strategy to be able to make Israel make Iraq look threatening. So now they're coming up with all kind of fancy theories about biological weapons and weapons of mass destruction and so on. It's just dust in the eye. Well, and if Israel does not pose any threat, why all of this hullabaloo, all of this shouting from the mountain tops about attacking Iraq? And who, in military strategy, which commander-in-chief, which country which is about to wage war, which country will announce for 1 year in advance, 2 years in advance, we're going to be attacking you? And then publish in the newspapers all kinds of alternative strategies, how to attack. It sounds suspicious. Sounds like the attack on Iraq is not for military purposes. Sounds like the attack on Iraq is for political purposes, so that political dividends might accrue from it. What are those political dividends? That is at the heart of the beginning of my talk tonight. I do not want to return to the lecture I gave last year, in which I began with the ruling state of Britain and identified that with the hadith, a day like a year. The hadith of Tamim ad-Dari. You shaking your heads? Imam? I'm going to have to repeat that lecture now?
Yeah, like a day.
Yeah?
Yeah, like a month.
A day like a year?
Yeah, like a month.
Okay, if you didn't hear that lecture, we don't have the time tonight to repeat it, so the tape recording is downstairs. Abu Rahman has it downstairs. The hadith is a day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week when Dajjal is released, okay? And we identify the island of Britain with a day like a year, and how did we arrive at that? We're not going to do that tonight, because we did that already. And then a day like a year ends, and it is followed by a day like a month, and one ruling state gave way to another. Britain is no longer the ruling state in the world. The United States of America now becomes the ruling state in the world. And in the same way that there was this mysterious, puzzling, baffling relationship between the island of Britain and the Holy Land, starting from the Balfour Declaration, so too now you have this mysterious, mystifying, baffling relationship between the United States of America and the State of Israel, which was so clearly apparent in Durban, World Conference on Racism and Racial Development, Racial Discrimination, when Israel walked out of the conference because the whole world combined to condemn Israel for its atrocities on the Palestinian people. Guess who walked out with Israel, holding on to Israel's coat's tail? Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam. So this puzzling, mystifying relationship between the second ruling state and Israel. The first ruling state in Israel, Britain and Israel. The second ruling state, the United States and Israel, is explained by a day like a month. And then we said that a day which is like a month is now coming to an end. And the September 11 attack on America is in many respects a parallel to another attack which had occurred many years earlier. There's a parallel between the two. That one was in the summer of 1914, okay? The assassination of the Grand Duke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. And that attack, that act of terrorism, launched the First World War, the big war. Similarly, September the 11th, the same forces at work in the summer of 1914 are the same forces now at work, September the 11th. With that attack in Sarajevo, Britain, which was the ruling state in the world, now during the First World War has to yield to another ruling state, namely the United States of America. If you don't understand, Go and read your history. Now it's September the 11th. The attack is now on the United States to bring down the United States as the ruling state in the world. But in the process of bringing it down, the United States have some very important work to do for Israel. I can identify tonight two very important things that the United States has to do for Israel. There are many more, but there's no need to do more than simply two. In order for Israel to succeed the United States as a ruling state in the world, not only must the US economy collapse and the US dollar collapse, and when the US dollar collapses, it brings down the whole world of paper money with it. And if you don't believe me, just wait. Just wait. This is going to be the topic, Blacktown, Wednesday night. Do please come on Wednesday night, because that is the most important lecture of all. Islam and the international monetary system. Please come on Wednesday night for that lecture. Not only must the United States collapse its economy and its money, but in addition, not only must the United States collapse its economy and its money, but in addition, Israel has to wage a big war, which even non-Muslim political analysts are now anticipating. A big war. Even Jews now within Israel, I'm getting emails, even Jews within Israel, Jewish academics who are up in opposition to the Sharon government, they are now understanding that there's something big about to happen. And they're warning the world about it. Of course, it's too late now. Israel has to wage this big war, which is already planned long ago. And the territory of the state of Israel will dramatically expand. And the Palestinian problem will be solved because they'll be exported out. That is the massive human rights crime that the Israeli academics are now anticipating and warning the world about. But in addition, in order for Israel to become the ruling state in the world, not only must she take control of all of this territory, she must also control the oil of the Middle East. Saudi oil, Iraqi oil, Kuwaiti oil, Gulf oil. But I don't see Israel taking Iranian oil. No. And you'd want to ask me why. Yes, you'd want to ask me why. In the question and answer session, not now. I don't see Israel touching the Iranian oil. Now that's going to be a very, very important event in world affairs. If Israel takes control of this oil, Israel will have her hands on the throat of the world. Not so much Britain and the United States, because Britain has North Sea oil. The United States has a lot of oil, sufficient to meet its domestic consumption. And so who is going to have Israel at their throats? The answer, Europe, Japan, and the rest of the world dependent upon Middle East oil, but particularly Europe and Japan. Which is why at this moment you will notice a lot of strange noises coming out of Europe in hostility to the United States. Because the Europeans are beginning to open their eyes and now beginning to slowly understand what we knew all along. Yes. This is why the German minister made a statement concerning Mr. Bush and acting in a way like Hitler acted. It's not by accident. But Israel has a PhD in deception, because it's Dajjal at the back of this, the mastermind. And Israel would not want to wage a big war and appear to the world naked, clearly as an aggressor. No, that's not deception. Israel has to wage her big war and make it appear as though she was only defending herself. The only Muslim I know of who has had the capacity to be able to penetrate the deception that has been going on all these years, the only one I know of, was a man who never went to Al-Azhar University. Now, he wasn't a sheikh. His name was Malcolm X. He's the only man I know of who had that eyes wish to see and could clearly recognize the strategy and the deception. Read Malcolm X. How is Israel going to launch this big war and yet get away from being perceived by the whole of humanity as the aggressor, blatant aggression? You have to come with a good strategy. The strategy is this. Ariel Sharon goes into Masjid al-Aqsa with 1,000 Israeli military with him, with their shoes on, with the full knowledge that this calculated act of extreme provocation must have a response, a fiery response. And as the flames of the new intifada emerge, you must keep it burning by committing upon the Palestinian people more and more atrocities that drive them into a greater and greater rage. This is planning, this is strategy, this is not happening by accident. As Israel unleashes this barbaric oppression upon the Palestinian people, you must have a television station which you plant amongst them, which will cover this, that your Egyptian television would not cover, and your Jordanian government would not allow on Jordanian television, so you create something called Al Jazeera. And the Arab masses believe Al Jazeera is their station. This is the only place in the world we can get authentic information, Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera is now used to portray all the atrocities. And so around the Arab world, the masses only have to tune into Al Jazeera and they know what's happening. And so the Arab masses become more and more angry, more and more enraged. And guess who begins to tremble now? The governments which are pro-American. The governments which have entered into peace treaties with Israel. These are the ones who are now trembling because their people are becoming more and more enraged. So Mubarak in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, I don't know, is Fahad or Abdullah, and Abdullah in Jordan, and Sheikh Sabah in Kuwait, etc. Israel has to judge the temperature on the ground in the Arab world. And because Israel has a strategic military alliance with the United States of America, it is when Israel judges the temperature to be hot enough, only then will Israel give the go-ahead to the United States to attack Iraq. Only then. And you have to inform the whole world in advance that you're going to attack Iraq. So the masses must be expecting it. Why? So that when the United States attacks Iraq, you would have the kind of spontaneous outburst from the Arab masses that you want. That they will take to the streets in massive demonstrations. The kind which brought down Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in Pakistan. The kind which brought down His Imperial Majesty, the King of Kings. Which one? Shahin Shah, the King of Kings. They tested this formula. They tested this formula because they were actively involved in all that drama in Iran. Oh yes. Without in any way being uncharitable or lessening in any way my appreciation and my respect and the honor which I have for those who led the Iranian Revolution. I have to admit that in addition to their sincere efforts and their struggle against the oppression of the Shah, that there were also others that worked to help them without their even knowing it. So they have finessed this methodology of how to bring the masses out onto the streets. And this is what is about to occur. As the masses go out onto the streets, the ones who are going to be targeted are the pro-American regimes in the Arab world. The objective? To get one or more of these regimes to fall through massive demonstrations, anti-American and anti-Israeli demonstrations. Which one is likely to fall first? Let me stop. Come on. Demonstrations. Which one is likely to fall first? Let me stop. Come on. Huh? Jordan is correct. Jordan is correct. Which is why Abdullah has his bags packed already. The reason why Jordan is the first to fall, likely to fall, is because more than half of the population of Jordan is Palestinian. And because Jordan shares a border with Israel. If the Jordanian government falls in consequence of the attack on Iraq, and the Jordanian government, or shall I call it the Anglo-Jordanian government, is now replaced by an anti-American, anti-Israeli, and best of all, a government declaring itself to be Islamic. If that happens, and the Jews are going to be praying for that to happen, then you will see television really coming of age for the second time. The first time was September 11th. Television will now get to work around the world, CNN leading the pack, and the media around the world will now be used to portray an impending scenario in which, like the domino effect, governments around the world of Islam, they will claim, are now going to fall. And the world of Islam is rising up now. And one-eyed Muslims, of course, are going to believe it. The world of Islam is now going to rise up, and all these governments are going to be swept away. And authentic governments representing the Muslim masses will now emerge. And therefore the Jews are going to have their throats cut. This is going to be the most dangerous moment in the entire life of the world of Jews. The media will portray it. If we don't do something, we will all be slaughtered by these Muslim fanatics. I tell you, this will be drama worthy of Hollywood when it comes. Huh? They must be hating me now for revealing their secrets. It is in this scenario that Israel will say, we have to do something. If we just sit here and do nothing, the state of Israel will be destroyed and the Jews will all be slaughtered. What can we do? They call it a preemptive strike. A preemptive strike. But it won't be a preemptive strike. It will be the most dazzling display of the magnificent application of state-of-the-art military technology that will leave even Uncle Sam in the backyard. A war like Uncle Sam has never seen and could never wage. That is what Israel is going to wage. Do they have the technology? I believe they have technology that even Uncle Sam doesn't have. It will be a lightning strike. Israel has to put on this magnificent display of military power and state-of-the-art technology beyond anything else that the world has ever known, in order for Israel to impress upon mankind the validity of its credentials that is now going to become the new ruling state in the world. Before Fahad could even blink, the Israelis have taken over the Saudi oil fields and the Iraqi and the Kuwaiti oil fields. The United States, of course, will make some noise, and Britain will make some noise, but will they send troops? No, of course not. The United Nations Security Council is now going to be used by the rest of the world, particularly Uncle Europe, and Uncle Japan, and the rest of the world. They will take the United Nations and seek to use the United Nations now to do something about this. Collective action to force Israel to withdraw. Because if Israel does not withdraw, Europe is going to be choked, Japan is going to be choked. And as the United Nations is now being used for the first time in its history, an attempt is being made to use the United Nations effectively by the rest of the world, I anticipate that the United States Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives will now pass resolutions forcing the US government to withdraw from the United Nations. And as soon as the United States withdraws from the United Nations can no longer sit down in New York, pack up and move. So in the same way that the League of Nations collapsed, the United Nations now collapses. United Nations cannot be relocated anywhere else. No. Because the United States is the ruling state in the world. The League of Nations collapsed because the United States was not in the League of Nations. That's why the League of Nations collapsed. And so the United Nations cannot be relocated anywhere. No, it can't take it to Geneva. It's not going to work. And so Israel gets to hold on to the fruits of her naked aggression. And Israel takes control of the oil of the Middle East. It may be that it will be that moment when the US dollar collapses, but more of this in my lecture on Islam and the international monetary system, and you would be amazed. We say we follow the Quran, but we lie. We lie. We say that we follow Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, but we lie. We lie when you attend our lecture on Islam and the international monetary system. When Israel becomes the ruling state in the world, then Israel will rule the world for a day which is like a week. If you doubt me, and you doubt my method of analysis, I say no problem. Just wait. Just wait. It is at that time that oppression of the true followers of Muhammad ﷺ will really begin. The part-time Muslims, of course, will be attacked now and then for purposes of psychological intimidation. So they put their tail between their legs and go back home and watch TV. But the full-time Muslims are going to be attacked and targeted, and they'll know you from your bank account. That's all. Your bank account will tell them everything they want to tell. The Prophet said ﷺ about this oppression, that a man would pass by a grave and roll on the grave and say, I wish I were in the grave rather than the dead man. Not because of religious reasons, but because of biting, relentless oppression. So if you are comfortable in Sydney, and you think that things are going to continue as it is, and you will get away from the storm, the war on Islam that's going on now, and yet you can remain as a good Muslim, you're living in dreamland. Because the war on Islam is going to intensify like nothing you've ever seen before. What you've had so far is only an introduction to the war on Islam. The war on Islam has been going on for more than 1,000 years. Not since September the 11th. Wake up. The Crusades were part of the war on Islam. The same people who launched the Crusades are the same people who dismantled the Ottoman Islamic Empire, are the same people who destroyed the Caliphate, which is my lecture for tomorrow night, Imam al-Mahdi and the return of the Khilafah. It is the same people who today created the State of Israel and control the State of Israel. It is the same people who are going to be ruling the world, the European. It is the same people who today created the State of Israel and control the State of Israel. It is the same people who are going to be ruling the world, the European, who was first dressed up as a Christian and is then dressed up as a Jew. After Israel has ruled the world, of course, for a day which is like a week, at the end of that period of time, what's going to happen to the water in the Sea of Galilee? Be dry up. It is only when the water in the Sea of Galilee is dried up, it is at that time, according to the Ahadith in Sahih Muslim, you can go and check it out, my book is downstairs, Jerusalem in the Quran, go read it. It is at that time that you can expect the Son of Mary to return. So when I said, I expect it to be 50 years from now, about 50 years, and when I put into the record for your tape records, for those who listen to this lecture when I'm dead and gone, when I said, I can be wrong. And some people still have objections to his saying that he expects the Son of Mary to be coming back in about 50 years from now. Okay, I'll change it. All I have to say is I expect the Sea of Galilee to be dried up in about 50 years from now. That's all I have to say. It's the same thing. Because the Son of Mary will return when the Sea of Galilee is dried up. So if they have objections to that, all I have to say, well, I expect the Sea of Galilee to dry up, 50 years today, and they'll be happy with that. It is at that time that Dajjal will now enter into a day which is like our day, and therefore he'll be in our dimension of time. And he'll be ruling the world from Jerusalem with what would appear to be eternal rule. It is at that time that the Imam will emerge from Medina, hurrying to Mecca, which is our lecture for tomorrow night. It is at that time that the Son of Mary will come down, and the Son of Mary will have his hands on the wings of two angels. It is at that time that the true Messiah will kill the false Messiah. When I lecture on Jerusalem in the Quran at Lakemba on Monday the 7th, inshallah, we go over the subject again, but in greater detail than I did over here. So that lecture is going to be 2.5 hours, inshallah. It is at that time that the true Messiah will kill the false Messiah. It is at that time that Gog and Magog will be destroyed. It is at that time that the army will come from Khurasan, and no one will be able to stop that army until it reaches Jerusalem. Hadith of Sunan of Tirmizi, Sahih Hadith. And then Islam will destroy the state of Israel, liberate the Holy Land. It is at that time the Hadith which is in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. If you want to check the credentials of any of your Muslim leaders in Australia, check them out. Can we trust this man? Ask him, would you ever quote this hadith in public? He'll turn around and run so fast, faster than Federal Express, if he doesn't have faith in his heart, but he's a Muslim leader. Which hadith? Test them out with this. It is in Sahih Bukhari, it is in Sahih Muslim, it is muttafaqun alayh. And every Palestinian loved this hadith. Oh yes. La tuqatilunna al-Yahud, you'll most certainly fight the Jews. Wa la taqtulunnahum, and you'll most certainly kill them. Hatta yaqulu al-hajar, at that time the stones will speak, Ya Muslim, hadha Yahudiyun wara'i, there's a Jew hiding behind me, fata'ala faqtul, so come and kill him. Check them out, your leaders. Which one will quote this hadith? When you find a man who is prepared to quote this hadith in public, you got your leader. Now then, let's come to the nitty-gritty. What is the future of the Ummah during this interim period, until such time as Islam triumphs in the world? What we can expect is the emergence, or rather the culmination of the political strategy for the establishment of one world government, which will control all of mankind. That we have massively betrayed the Quran is clear from the ayah of Surah Al-Ma'idah. Which ayah? Again, I don't think they'll want to quote it. He says, Subhanahu wa ta'ala, ba'da a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhidhul yahuda wan nasara awliya ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. If you're an Arab tonight, good news for you. You don't need a translation. You got it already. But for the rest who need a translation for the word of Allah, remember, if you stay like that, you're disrespecting the Quran. May I repeat that? If you remain like this, that you do not know what I have just said, because you couldn't understand it, if you remain like this, you are disrespecting the Quran, and you'll pay a price for it. O you who believe, do not turn to Jews and to Christians for that relationship in which they become your awliya, a relationship in which you depend upon them for your protection, and you are now subservient to them, like an alliance. Do not do that. Of course, Liaquat Ali Khan didn't read the Quran properly when he made his famous trip to the United States and handed over Pakistan as a client state to the United States. Many years later, they tried to erase it with a book called Friends, Not Master, but too late. Too late. Do not turn to the Jews and Christians for that kind of a relationship where you are now subservient to them. And they are your bosses and offer you their protection. Don't do that, says Allah. بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. They are protecting friends of each other. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ. Whosoever from amongst you turn to the world of Jews and Christians for that kind of a relationship, accept it, submit to it. فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. You have left the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. You're just whistling in the wind now. You have left the ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. If you think you are still in the ummah, you're just whistling in the wind. فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Surely Allah will not provide guidance for a people who commit such an atrocious act of wrongdoing. This is the political landscape of world government, in which you will no longer be citizens of Australia and Bangladesh, but you will now be citizens of the world, governed by a world government, which obviously will eventually be the Jews. What kind of a relationship do the Jews have with us? Does Allah speak about this in the Quran, when they have political control over all of us? What will be our fate? He says in the Quran, take this ayah as well and use it as a test. Will they quote it? Your leaders. لَتَجِدَنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودِ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. This is the word of Allah, not Imran Hussein. They can't arrest me for this. You had to arrest Allah. But they can't arrest Allah. لَتَجِدَنَّ. You will surely find time and again. But they can't arrest Allah. لَتَجِدَنَّ. You will surely find time and again. أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ عَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودِ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. That those who will have in their hearts the greatest hatred and enmity and hostility for you will be the Jews. So now your most dangerous enemy in the world is in charge of you. What a pity. What a future for the Muslim Ummah coming up now. That is the political landscape. What about the economic landscape? What happens when paper money collapses, disappears? Because Mufti is either sleeping or eating halwa. Because Mufti has not as yet declared that this paper money is haram. We pray that one Mufti might stop eating halwa and take a look at the paper money, inshallah. Ameen. When the world international monetary system collapses and it is replaced by the new monetary system that you're going to hear about tomorrow night, inshallah, not only would the Jews, your worst and bitterest enemy, now have political control over you, they will have economic and monetary control over you. And you'll be frightened when you hear tomorrow night's lecture. And so it's political slavery and economic slavery coming up for us. In addition, these next 50 years, if you have a beard, that's it. You're going to be targeted, hounded like a dog. If you refuse to dress like them, and you want to dress in a manner which identifies you as a Muslim, they're coming after you. You say, I don't want to be part of the blue jeans Jamaat. If you're 17 years of age tonight, I hope you're listening, son. They're coming after you. Because your way of life as a Muslim is going to be ghareeb. That's the word, ghareeb. Something strange, something different from the global society and its universal, uniform way of life. And so life is going to become increasingly difficult these next 50 years. You lose your job because you refuse to take a drink of whiskey. I was interviewed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago for the post of a foreign service officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In many parts of the world, this is a diplomatic job, this is best job you can get. You are in the elite. They said to me in the interview, Mr. Hussain, we know that you are Muslim. And we know that you Muslims do not drink fire water. But when you are appointed as a foreign service officer and you are posted abroad in a diplomatic mission, the government will provide you with a home in which to live. And you will be required, for fulfilling your job, you'll be required to keep alcohol in your home. And Mr. Hussain, we have something more to say to you. You would be required to serve alcohol at your table. Remember, Mr. Hussain, we're not asking you to drink this stuff. We're just asking you to serve it and to keep it in your home. So I told them to get lost. I'm not going to keep it in my home, and I'm not going to serve it at my table. So they responded, I got the job, but they never posted me abroad. I remained in the job for 5 years without ever getting a diplomatic passport. Because you got to make your first trip abroad. When you make your first trip abroad, then you get your diplomatic passport. So I never got a diplomatic passport. This is what you're going to have to put up with now. So your job that you're holding on to now, and you think you're secure, and with the salary you could pay the monthly mortgage, to which bank? And you have this lovely car in a nice suburb of Sydney, and you praise the Lord for the good life. Remember, if you wish to be sincere to Islam, you're going to lose your job. What are you going to do when you lose your job? Because you do not want to betray Allah and His Messenger. What are you going to do when your wife is being subjected to abuse on the streets because she's in hijab? And I have to say this one, I can't avoid it. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, one of the signs of the last day is that people will be having sexual intercourse in public like donkeys. And the most honorable man of that time will be one who passes by and sees this couple having sexual relations in public. And he says to the man, can't you at least take her behind the wall? The signs are very plain and clear, and none of you can deny it tonight, that we are well on our way to that day. I met someone in Kuala Lumpur belonging to the Naqshbandi Sufi order. And this man said to me, he said, Sheikh, That's not tomorrow. I've already seen that. I have seen that on a street of Tokyo in Japan. I saw with my own eyes people having sex in public like donkeys. Okay? This man is in Tokyo. If they're not doing it on the street now, like donkeys, they're doing it in other places. But it's going to come onto the streets. My question to you is, what are you going to do? When you're in political slavery, when you're in economic slavery, when you're part of a global society now which is demonizing you, you're losing your jobs, your wife is being abused, and now your children have to see these things before their eyes, what are you going to do? My answer is, if you're comfortable with that, you can stay in downtown Sydney. But if you're not comfortable with it, then you'll be interested in the rest of the lecture. Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran responds and tells us, وَإِذْ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ يَنْشُرْ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ مِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ وَيُهَيِّئْ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَمْرِكُمْ مِرْفَقًا. You got to disconnect from that godless world. It is only when you disconnect, فَافْرِقْ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَ الْقَوْمِ الْفَاسِقِينَ, the dua of Musa alayhi salam. It is only when you disconnect, only then will Allah's rahmah come upon you. How do we disconnect? Well, you go back to Bangladesh, it's the same Gog and Magog world order. You go Karachi, it's the same like downtown Manhattan. How do you disconnect? The answer is, you got to get out of the godless cities, because the world of globalization is witnessing the countryside being denuded and the masses moving into the cities, of course, to provide cheap labor. As the masses move into the cities, you now have, for the first time in history, mega cities. 10, 20 million people in a city. So we move in the opposite direction from the rest of mankind. That is hikmah. Allah is impressed now by the Muslim who moves in the opposite direction from the global society. As you disconnect from the godless world and you go out into the open countryside, please don't come at me at the end of the lecture and ask me, are we going to abandon those in the city? Are we going to have da'wah in the city? Do not come with that question at the end of the lecture. Because we are not isolating ourselves. No. In fact, we can do far more da'wah from that village than we can from downtown Sydney. We go and buy land where land is cheap and where there's water. We go and buy land where land is cheap and where there's water, fertile land. 10, 20 years from now, when this audio tape is in the hands of a little 17-year-old who's not even born today as I'm speaking to you, in his heart this fire, this flame will be burning now. I want to go and do it. Go and buy land where land is cheap and where there's water. And you're far enough away from the godless world. The farther you are away, the better it is. And go and establish Allah's deen. Not at the macro level, because that's not possible, but at the micro level, because that is possible. In this Muslim village, you're not going to abandon jihad. Oh no. The Muslim village cannot threaten the state. Absolutely clear. The Muslim village cannot threaten the state. If you start amassing weapons in the Muslim village to take on Canberra, you'll be destroyed. You will be destroyed, you'll be very foolish. And so the Muslim village cannot threaten the state, cannot pose a threat to the state. Does that mean are we going to sit down and allow them to come and rape our women? No. Every single child born in that Muslim village must be brought up as a warrior. You can't do that in the shopping malls of Sydney. As a warrior. We do not threaten you. No. We are not a people who want war with you. No. But if ever you make the mistake to attack us, and there is no way for us to retreat with safety and protect our women and children, you're going to have a fight on your hands. Because we will fight like you've never seen a human being fight before. Every single one of us will be a roaring lion of a man. Because we will say we prefer to die as men than to live as slaves. So for that you need military training. You need to build yourself physically, psychologically. At the same time, all of this preparation is not for the purpose of threatening the state or threatening anyone. The Muslim village must be one jama'ah, because that is Islam. So this is not going to be a Deobandi village, or a Tabligh Jamaat village, or a Barelvi village, or a Salafi village, or a Wahhabi village, or a Ahle Hadith village. Come help me with some more names. No. This is a Muslim village for all full-time Muslims. All. Come, brother. And so the Sufi and the Salafi will live together as brothers in this village, on the condition that it must be plain, absolutely plain and clear beyond the shadow of a doubt for all, that insofar as the public life of this village is concerned, please listen carefully, because Al-Arqam movement in Malaysia didn't understand this and they were destroyed. Insofar as the public life of this village is concerned, and insofar as the masjid is concerned, nothing will be allowed unless it is based on the Quran and the universally accepted Sunnah. And so if you have a Muslim practice which is not based on the Quran and the universally accepted Sunnah, and which is manifestly beneficial, like the halaqah of zikr, okay? Take it in your private life. That's all we ask of you. Take it in your private life. Do not bring it in the public life, so that there will be no cause for fitna. If anybody wants to invade into your private life now and shout out bid'ah and haram, we'll throw him out of that village faster than Federal Express. And so now the Sufi and the Salafi, you don't believe me, will live together as brothers in this village. And when they wage jihad, they'll wage jihad side by side. The Muslim village therefore must be one jama'ah and must have one amir. Whoever that amir is, even if he be a black Abyssinian with a head like dried grapes, khutbatul wida, you must obey him. You must obey him on the condition that obedience of the amir does not require disobedience of Allah and His Messenger. You must obey him. If you cannot obey the amir in an order which is just, then goodbye. Go back to Sydney. And now the amir will enforce the deen on the members of the jama'ah. If you commit a sin for which is a public flogging, And you say, I don't want to be flogged. Okay, go back Sydney. You can't live amongst us anymore. If you want to live amongst us, then you have to authorize us to give you the public flogging. And so we'll enforce the hudud in the village on those who consent to allow us to enforce it upon them. And those who do not consent, we ask them to leave. The Muslim village will be an island of Islam in a godless world. Your children will now grow up in an atmosphere which is healthy for them, rather than naked people around them in the shopping malls. Can this Muslim village be used for da'wah? Of course it can. I told you I was in South Africa for the last 3 months. And in South Africa, the white and the black still live separately. The white is still rich and getting richer, and the black is still poor and getting poorer, despite a black government. So there is a big explosion that's coming. You don't need a PhD for that. And when the explosion comes, of course, your enemies are going to use their money now to get a particular group to go and attack Muslim businesses and Muslim homes. It happened in Durban already once. How do you respond to this? The answer is you build a Muslim village in which the black and the white and the brown and the yellow all live together as one family. Government of South Africa can't do that. Archbishop Tutu can't do that. Nelson Mandela can't do that. We can do it. Islam can do it. In fact, I have the good news for you tonight, that the project has already started in South Africa. In a place called close to Ladysmith, they got the land already, and they've earmarked this land for the Muslim village, and they've already started to put African families who have entered into Islam onto that land. I told them, if you have any problems in getting white Muslims, let me know. We get you some from Bosnia. When you have white and black and brown and yellow living together as one family, isn't that da'wah? Much more powerful da'wah than all the gush that you perform and all the 5-star masajid that you build. This is da'wah, South Africa, if you're listening. Because I saw a lot of strange things in South Africa. But I didn't see real da'wah so far in South Africa. No. The black man in the Muslim village is no longer poor. And he didn't get out of his poverty through charity. Well, then how did he get out of his poverty? Brothers, this is da'wah. This is tabligh. He got out of his poverty because, number one, we establish a free and a fair market in the Muslim village, which does not exist anywhere in the world. A free and a fair market because no borrowing and lending of money on interest, number one. And number two, money which is sunnah money. You never heard about that before in your life. Sunnah money. That's my lecture tomorrow night, inshallah. And thirdly, we said, if you plant, you reap. You don't plant, you don't reap. Because Allah said so in the Quran. But nobody ever translated it like this. If you plant, you reap. If you don't plant, you can't reap. Where did he say that? MashaAllah, correct. وَأَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. This is the translation. You plant, you reap. You don't plant, you can't reap. But banks are not planting. The bank manager is playing tennis. Banks are not planting, but banks are reaping more than anybody else. But Allah says, if you didn't plant, you can't reap. But then how come banks are reaping when they didn't plant? Answer is simple. They're reaping what others are planting. Yeah, but Louis Farrakhan doesn't know that. No, he doesn't know that. They're reaping what others are planting. They're living off the sweat of the masses. They're sucking the blood of the masses. They're blood suckers. So in the Muslim village, we don't allow that. This is riba through the front door. You never heard about it before, eh? Riba through the front door. May I introduce you to riba through the back door? Will you allow me? What you do is, you establish something called, a curious thing called the Islamic Bank. I don't know whether you've ever heard about it. No comments. You establish a curious thing called an Islamic Bank. And the Islamic Bank now lends money on interest, but disguises it as a sale. And if you disagree with me, the platform is yours. The platform is yours, brother. I'm ready anytime you are. Lend money on interest, but disguise it as a sale. That's backdoor riba. And it stinks. It's worse than riba through the front door. Because it traps those pious Muslims who want to stay away from haram. They are the ones who are attacked. This is deception at its worst. But we're not the first, you know. The Jews did it before us. But they don't know that. And the Prophet said, we'll follow them step by step. He said that even if they go down into a lizard's hole, you'll go down into the lizard's hole. That's where the Islamic Bank is. Down in the lizard's hole. But we'll explain this in greater detail tomorrow, if we have the freedom to speak tomorrow. Inshallah. And so in the Islamic village, in the Muslim village, if you're a black man and you plant, you reap. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give whatever He wants to give. And if you're a white man and you don't plant, you ain't gonna reap. Not in our village. So goodbye, white South Africa that was engaged in racial discrimination against the people. And so the black man in the Muslim village is no longer poor. And he didn't get out of poverty through charity. No, he worked for it. You know what kind of dawah is involved here? Black South Africa, 20 million of them will now raise their hands to the heavens. And they say, praise the Lord, that Islam has finally arrived in this country. So don't tell me anything about isolationism and not doing any da'wah, because this is better da'wah than anything you've done before. This is da'wah. You want to preach the truth? Establish it. Establish it before you preach it. So that when you preach the truth, you can invite people, come and take a look at it. This is Islam. In this Muslim village, therefore, we establish Islam. And if we are firm on the Quran and Sunnah, remember that. You must not step out of the Quran and Sunnah by 1 inch, not even 1 inch. Then Allah will protect you. Yes, He is fa'alul lima yurid. When Allah protects you, then none can harm you. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجٍ وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إلى آخر الآية. This is the future of the Muslim Ummah. It doesn't matter whether you're in Lebanon or you're in Australia. It is the countryside you must head for and build the Muslim village for the next 50 years. so that you can survive the storm, while all the rest of mankind are going down the river of no return. Let me end by using an analogy. They built a 5-star masjid. Yeah, I saw it. 15 million rands. And they think they've accomplished something great. But they're voting in the elections. And they're so blind they can't see backdoor riba. They're on board the ship. Yeah, the masjid is full, subhanallah. They are on board the ship. And they do not know that the ship is sinking. Pity them. The ship is sinking. And you build a 5-star masjid on board the ship. When you come to our Muslim village, you're not going to see a 5-star masjid. You will see a thatch roof. And you will see simple mud walls or so. A simple structure of the masjid. That ship is sinking. No one can prevent it from sinking. That is the hadith about 999 out of every 1,000. The Muslim Ummah can have a future only if it gets off that ship. So long as you remain on board that ship, no matter how many salat you perform, you're going to sink with the ship. But if you get off that ship, you will now be following Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may bless all those who now faithfully follow the Quran and the Sunnah, regardless of the price they have to pay. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Ameen. Let me at the beginning make it abundantly plain and clear that I hold the leaders of the Iranian Revolution with respect. I honor them. And I consider those who gave their lives, who died in the struggle to liberate Iran from the oppressive rule of the Shah, to be people who have died in Allah's way. I pray for Allah's mercy upon them, blessings for them. Let me make it clear that the world of Islam have allowed the Shia to perform the Hajj for 1400 years. No regime in control of the Hijaz, no regime in the control of the Hijaz, to the best of my knowledge, in these 1400 years, have ever prevented the Shia from performing the Hajj on the grounds that they were not Muslims. It is therefore, I think, a little bit late in the day for some fatwa to be issued that the Shia are kuffar. So I recognize the Shia of Iran as Muslims. Having said that, my honor and respect for those who led the Iranian Revolution and those who fought in the Iranian Revolution, my admiration for them. And having spoken about my recognition of them as Muslims, let me now say that anyone who declares of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu that he is a usurper is misguided. This is not an uncharitable statement. This is not a declaration of any war, it's just a factual statement. And when you compound that by declaring that Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a usurper, you're misguided. And when you compound that by declaring that Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a usurper, you are thrice misguided. And so, because of this misguidance that I've just mentioned, this is enough, I don't need to go beyond this. Was a usurper, you are thrice misguided. And so, because of this misguidance that I've just mentioned, this is enough, I don't need to go beyond this. The version of Islam which emerges from our Shia brothers cannot be considered to be completely authentic. Now, and therefore, it can now be understood why this partially authentic version of Islam is the only version of Islam which can succeed in a revolution in the modern age. Nobody else. Nobody else. And when Saddam Hussein is toppled, it is more likely than not that the regime which will replace him would be Shia. What this would do would be to lend credibility to the Shia claim to validity, that this is the authentic Islam, because this is the only Islam which is succeeding in the modern world. Israel wouldn't want to destroy that. And so the Iranian oil is not likely to be touched. Wait, and we will see. Okay, I just answered this question. You spoke about the forces behind WW2 being the same forces manipulating the Iranian revolution. I just answered this. Why will Iran not be attacked? I just answered this. If Islamic banks are taking backdoor riba, then what about musharaka and mudaraba? Musharaka is halal. It's called partnership. Mudaraba is halal. I have money, but I don't have business expertise and business acumen. You have a business, okay? So I invest my money in your business, but I'm not running the business. You're running it. If the business makes a profit, I get a share, but it'll be less than musharaka. If the business suffers a loss, I share in the loss. This is mudaraba, and this is how a stock market, actually, stock market operates. But this must be a stock market which is free from riba. That stock market is actually the system of mudaraba at the level of a system. What kind of economic activities will there be in the village? Number one, the production of food. I think I spoke about this previously. And this will be the best food which will fetch the highest price, because organically produced food. Whatever surplus production we have, because the village will only consume the food it produces. We ain't eating no supermarket food, not for Sydney. Okay? The village will consume only the food which it produces. And the reason for this is because of Suratul Kahf. The Suratul Kahf, where the young men were woken up after 300 years, and naturally you'll feel hungry after 300 years. And they sent one of their young men to buy some food, and they said, فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَذْكَى تَعَامٍ. So go search for that food which is purest, indicating that food in the age of Dajjal is going to be corrupted. That's it today. So surplus production of food will be marketed. We get an income from that. Secondly, the village must have industry. In Indonesia, for example, we'd want to concentrate on batik, because the Indonesians have a natural talent for artistry. Batik. Where industry needs energy, where are we going to get the energy from? Where are we going to get the energy from? Are we going to depend on the government for energy?
Hydro.
Suratul Kahf answers and points to nature. Points to nature. Go to nature for energy. In Suratul Kahf, which one of nature is pointed out to? Solar energy. وَنُقَلِّبُهُمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ. How is this affected? They're being turned to the left and to the right. How? وترى الشمس إذا طلعت تزاور عن كهفهم ذات اليمين وإذا غربت تخرجهم ذات الشمال وهم في فجوة منه. When the sunshine enters in the morning, the sunshine enters in the evening, but in the daytime sunshine does not enter. And the bodies are rolling to the left and the right. Obviously this is attraction to sunlight. What is this called in science? Attraction to sunlight. Photo? Not photosynthesis. You got to go back to your physics book.
Solar energy.
Phototropism.
Solar energy.
And now the sunshine is transformed into energy. What is this called? Photosynthesis. And so Surah Al-Kahf is pointing to nature as a source of energy. In this case, solar energy. So that you achieve energy independence. You have water independence, you have energy independence. We want to have industries in the village, because we do not want a village in which all our men folk in the morning they go to work to Sydney, and in the evening they're coming back home. This is not a Muslim village, it's a hotel. We want a Muslim village in which Salatul Jummah and the Masjid, Salatul Dhuhr and the Masjid is full. Salatul Asr and the Masjid is full. So for that we've got to provide means of livelihood, sustenance within the village. So the village will have its own economy, and there will be those present here tonight who will be able to do a better job than I can in working out that economy. Why is Tabligh Dawah less effective than Islamic village Dawah? No. I don't know what is Tabligh Dawah. I know what is Tabligh, it is to reach out. I know what is Dawah, it's a call. I don't know what is Tabligh Dawah. Good. I was talking about those who build a 5-star masjid. Oh yes, 5-star. And calling the people to the masjid. And the masjid is full. But they don't know they built the masjid on a ship that is sinking. And the ship is sinking and they don't know it. And when the ship sinks, they will sink with it. And they're calling people to Islam while the ship is sinking. Real da'wah must emerge from a people who understand the world, using Islam to understand the world, and using Islam to respond to the world. That is da'wah, and I gave you the example of how the Muslim village would impact upon the black masses. America and Britain are all capitalist states. Policies built upon would impact upon the black masses. America and Britain are all capitalist states. Policies built upon interests. Regarding Israel, it has always been a tool of the capitalist state. It derives its legitimacy and strength from these states. Israel and Jews are cowards. How can Israel take on the Muslims? Isn't it the US, with its build-up of troops, that is preparing to take on the Muslims? My answer is, wait and see. Wait and see. I have used the hadith to describe a reality in which one ruling state is about to give way to another. So my analysis comes out of the hadith. This analysis comes out of political political analysis using normal tools of political analysis. I think this would be a valid analysis for someone using normal tools of political analysis. But someone using the Quran and Sunnah would understand that this is not correct. In your booklet, you've only talked about the Middle East. When will the situation in the Indian subcontinent? What about the situation in the Indian subcontinent, South Asia and Central Asia? This is not correct. In my booklet, I said that the United States could not have been attacked on September the 11th unless you had first put in place a government in Islamabad. It's there in my book. They had to first put their man in Islamabad before they could attack the United States on September the 11th. And so all that drama in the sky about an aeroplane running out of fuel, that belonged to Hollywood. That belonged to Hollywood. Nawaz Sharif, the Prime Minister, was absolutely correct when he said that this was a conspiracy hatched against me. So that I could be removed from power, and so that this government could be put in place. No elected government of Pakistan could ever have consented to the United States using the territory of Pakistan to attack Afghanistan. That is suicide. No government would have done that. Not even the worst government of Pakistan would ever have done that. So you had to have a Jewish government in Pakistan, a government established by the Jews to serve the Jews. Only then you could have had a government in Pakistan would allow the United States to use the territory of Pakistan to attack Afghanistan. So don't say that I did not speak about the subcontinent. What role will Iran play in the upcoming rising from Khorasan? This is tomorrow's lecture. No, yeah, tomorrow is Imam al-Mahdi? Yep. Yeah, tomorrow. If the state of Israel will be dominant over the whole world, will it be without anyone's help? If the answer is yes, then what does it mean by Allah's word, illa bihablim min Allah? When the Jews boasted of what they did to Nabi Isa alayhi salam, okay, that was the last straw. Then Allah's curse came upon them. وَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. And even in Surah Al-Fatiha, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ, the Jews. Now their fate around the world is to live in misery, to live in poverty, إِلَّا بِحَبْلٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَحَبْلٍ مِّنَ النَّاسِ. The only exception to this, the only time the Jewish civilization can prosper after the attempt to crucify Isa alayhi salam is if they live under a non-Muslim rule, and that non-Muslim rule extend to them guarantee of security. Or if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to give it to them temporarily. Other than this, their state will now be maskana and zilla and ghadab min Allah. What is the source of income in the Muslim village? Can we maintain our careers and jobs, or do we have to return to subsistence farming? I don't think this is subsistence farming. If you're producing that food which will fetch the highest price. I mean, in South Africa, 6 million whites are going to be lining up to buy this food because they know they can trust Muslims, they can't trust anybody else. It's like blood. When they want blood, the best blood you can get is Muslim blood. I mean, full-time Muslim, not part-time. So the food which will be produced by the Muslim village will fetch the highest price. This is not subsistence farming. But I've mentioned that in addition to farming, food crops and dairy farming, the village must also have its own industry. We can have cottage industries like batik in Indonesia, cottage industries. I mean, there are some Muslims, not the Malay, but the Indian Muslim, Pakistani Muslim. I mean, he's been given a special talent for computer software engineering. You go down to Silicon Valley in San Francisco. You know how many Hindus, Indians are out there? The place looks like Little India. Huh? Silicon Valley looks like Little India. Because, of course, the Hindus are the ones who have taken the market. But it's also because of a special aptitude that Allah has given to a people. Wallahu ambatakum min al-ardi nabata. Allah has caused you to emerge from the earth like trees and plants, and some trees are for timber, some are for shade, some are ornamental. So these are people who have been endowed the aptitude for this kind of work. Inna sa'ayakum la shatta, another ayah. So why can't we, from the Muslim village, why can't we have software engineering companies operating out of the village? Huh? How can we implement Islam in this country? How can we apply two systems in one country? In your Islamic village, will we have the power to set up political, economic and judicial institutions? What will the Australian government have to say? This is Australia, but we already have a case study of Hama in Syria in 1982. The answer is, so long as you do not threaten the state, and so long as you enforce the Quran and the Sunnah, you have one more actor in the equation now. And that actor is fa'alul lima yurid. He has the power to do whatever he wants. That actor is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, He has declared that if you disconnect, يَنْشُرْ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ مِرَحْمَتِهِ, He will shower you with His rahmah. If, however, the government, not necessarily Australia, the government comes after you even in a remote village, where you do not threaten the state at all, this will provide you with a propaganda victory. How? The part-time Muslims in Sydney will now have to answer. This will provide you with a propaganda victory. How? The part-time Muslims in Sydney will now have to answer. You say this government is good. You say this system is good. You say there is no need for us to part from it. Now give us an answer. We never pose a threat to anyone at all. We are small, we are not big. We are far away. And yet they came against us. Is this not wickedness? So in the process of doing that, they will hand us a propaganda victory. If we are allowed to retreat, what we do? We go find another place. You know the experience of squatters? Squatting? You move them from one place, they go somewhere else. Squatting. So this is a Muslim village. And if in a particular territory there is no space, nowhere at all where a Muslim can live as a Muslim, still you're not allowed to throw in the towel and join them and become part of the melting pot. Why? Because when the angels are taking you into the hellfire, the angels are going to pause. Surah An-Nisa. And the angels are going to ask, Fima kuntum. What happened? How did you end up in this mess? That we're taking you into the hellfire. And then you're going to reply with, we had no alternative. There was nowhere to go. Kunna mustada'afina fil ard. Guess what the angels reply and say? Alam takun ardullahi wasi'a fatuhajiru fiha. Was Allah's earth not wide that you could have packed your suitcase and go search somewhere on Allah's earth where you could remain faithful to Allah? This is going to separate the men from the boys. Yes. When Muslims are shy in sparing even $5 a week, what is the prospect for such Muslims to form a Muslim village? I said it. I anticipate those who are 17, 18 and 19 and 20, 21 and 32 who come to attend my lectures or who listen to the tape recording when I'm gone. I said I think these are the ones, the young ones. Allah will put a fire in their hearts and these young ones will build a village. But if the old people want to come along, they're welcome. They're welcome. However, to buy the initial land, you have to find capital. So you have to find those in whose hearts Allah has put a love for the deen and who are prepared to invest, not to give, to invest the capital. Because once the land is bought and you got permission from municipal authorities for housing on part of the land, you can now sell house parts at a very moderate price and recover money which was invested. You're going to be selling farmlands in plots and recover money which was invested. So the money which was invested would be recovered. It's not charity. When the Muslim village is established, people who are poor can come now and live in this village. Because you don't need 500,000 Australian dollars to buy a house. What happened? Yours cost more than that? So you don't have to borrow money through the front door or through the back door. Because in Indonesia, I told you, the Muslim village will have bamboo houses, beautiful bamboo houses. And when the Messenger of Allah returns, you know which one? Nabi Isa alayhi salam, and you offer him a choice, the bamboo house or the $500,000 house, guess which one he's going to choose? Brother, you are talking about a Muslim villa. A Muslim villa? But in Sydney, the majority of Muslims live in Lakemba and Auburn, and these are areas known which is a crime zone in Sydney. How can you overcome this situation? I like this question. You know why? Because in the Muslim village, you can sleep with your windows open. Every single house I went to in South Africa had a big sign, yellow, red, armed response. Every single house. They had electrical wires, electrically wired. So if you touch that wire, you're going on holiday. Inside the house, not outside, inside the house you have to go through burglar alarms. Inside the house. And then the last one is where they're going to be sleeping. This is what I saw in South Africa. So I said to them, in the Muslim village, you could sleep with your window open. Why? Because the village would have its own collective security. This is private property. No one can enter this city, this village, without our permission. Okay? And we have one entrance into the village. You're going to pass through that entrance. The village would have its patrols. So you're not going to sleep every night. No. Imam will have to spend 1 or 2 nights on patrol. Yeah. And so the collective security of the village, number one. Number two, the village does not have BMWs. It is when you have wealth and you display the wealth that people come after you. But when you live in a bamboo house, who's going to come after you? And so you'll have much more security. You drink alcohol in our village, we're going to beat you. Yeah. You're a Muslim and you drink alcohol in our village, we're going to beat you. Take all your shoes, take your shirt and wrap it up and beat him, because it's going to be a public disgrace for him. Drugs, we're going to solve that problem in the village, inshallah. Now, I am not going to build a village. You have to build a village. What I've done is to plant the idea in your mind. And I'm sure some of you are going to come up with better ideas than I can think of at the moment in respect of the village. Does the Amir of the Muslim village have the knowledge to be a mujtahid? Is that a prerequisite? A mujtahid is one who engages in ijtihad. When ijtihad takes place, whoever it is who performs the ijtihad, and now even the President of the United States, even the President of the United States is engaged in ijtihad, and the government of Australia and the government of Singapore, engage in ijtihad because they're giving us new versions of Islam. And they're telling us this is the right Islam. It is when the ijtihad takes place that you now have to examine that ijtihad. And it must gain ijma' of the learned before that ijtihad can be accepted as part of our law. Last question, the talk was very good, but why say that there are no sects in the village? For when you mentioned the Sufis and the Salafis, what happened to the Muslims and the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? In the Muslim village, we do not want anyone to identify himself as Sufi. We say keep that in your private life. Insofar as the public life is concerned, you don't belong to any sect. Insofar as the public life of the Muslim village is concerned, you're only a Muslim. That's all.
يا بيت القدس لنا أمل ستعود القدس لأمتنا ونطهر ساحتك العذراء وننشر فوقك رايتنا فوقك رايتنا القدس تنادينا القدس تنادينا.
One Islam Productions, an Islamic film studio established in Australia, is dedicated to producing films for all Muslims. Just some of the films by One Islam Productions: children's programs, Islam for Me, We Remember Allah, Storytime, and more. Educational films, Pray as You Have Seen Me Pray, Words, Ramadan, Renewal of Faith. Documentaries. We at One Islam Productions believe that Islam is precious and deserves to be presented in only the highest quality. Visit us at www.oneislam.net for more information. One Islam Productions, a film production company run by Muslims for Muslims.